I do want to bring in NICHOLA LUDLAM-RAINE, a dietitian and author of Mummy Nutrition Guide. Would you say, Nicola, that parents are solely to blame for childhood obesity?
Childhood obesity is something that we need to take seriously, because what we know is that it leads to adulthood obesity. And I do agree with a lot of what's been said, but it's not assigning blame to a single entity, because childhood obesity is multifaceted. So it involves genetics, environment, socio-economic status, and lifestyles too, as well as sleep habits. So parents, schools, communities, governments all play a role in shaping our child's relationship with food and physical activity too.
What is the biggest mistakes that parents are making then when it comes to their kids' diets?
When you look at the research, it shows that children are only getting on average 2 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, which is less than half of what guidelines recommend. And there was also an NHS campaign a few years ago, which was around smaller tummies and smaller plates, which is to do with making sure that our children are given appropriate sized meals. And perhaps most importantly, not making our children clear the plates, which overrides their internal hunger and fullness cues. So there's something called the division of responsibility. And that's where the parent decides what, where and when, and then the child decides how much. But manufacturers also have a responsibility, exactly what you were saying about banning cartoons and character advertising on those foods that are high in fat and high in sugar.
Now, the other issue that will come into this, I'm sure someone will bring it up, is mental health. If you're going to put a child on a diet, let's say you've got an overweight child, what is a parent supposed to do? Because if you put them on a diet, that could be damaging for their mental health, couldn't it?
100%. In the sense that diets can be restrictive and banning foods, 100% no, because that can damage a child physically as well as psychologically. So we don't want children to lose weight. What we want is for certain children to slow down that rate of weight gain so that they grow into their weight. Where to start? The best place is to start with what they should be having more of: role modelling, fruits, vegetables. The NHS have got a fantastic website called Healthier Families. And also there's a fantastic charity called Henry, who are doing amazing work nationwide in reducing levels of childhood obesity.
It's a really interesting concept that actually you're not looking for kids to lose weight, they're going to grow into their weight. Fascinating. Nicola, stay with us. I'm going to take some calls. This all the time when we talk about BMIs and how it's maybe a guide, but it doesn't work for everyone. Would you agree with that, Nicola?
BMI, body mass index, is fantastic for the general population, but what we know is that it doesn't work on an individual level. And as this caller has quite rightly said, the BMI doesn't differentiate between fat and muscle. So that's why we need to go on things like waist circumference as well, and also trends and activity levels, which may matter more than where your child is on the BMI chart.
Nicola, I just wanted to check in with you very quickly. When it comes to losing weight, I always heard it was 80% what you eat and 20% exercise, but we're hearing exercise all the time. And I suppose in children that ratio might be slightly different, is it?
Yeah, so in adults, that is what I would say. But I think with children, preschoolers, so ages 1 to 4, actually need around 3 hours of physical activity a day. So basically moving around. And then from 5 and upwards, they need at least an hour. So we want to be encouraging parents, if they can, walk to school instead of driving. Can they go out on a weekend and basically like role model? So bring physical activity into the day-to-day lives and yet reducing screen time, of course. But what I'm not sure has been said is that the levels of childhood obesity are actually almost twice as high in the socially deprived areas. Yeah. So that's where the government needs to be targeting their effort and support. And just to remember, it's empathy before education.
And why is that, do you think, as a nutritionist, that it's in the more deprived areas?
A few different reasons. So education, cost of living, cooking skills. So that these parents need to be educated, but we also need to not judge, because when it comes to weight and also parenting styles, they're two topics that people can get very sensitive about. So the way that we approach this, way that healthcare professionals approach it, has to be done in a very sensitive manner. And even just looking at the types of shops that are in these areas, that's where the changes need to be made. And shops such as, Aldi and Lidl, I think, are doing great things because they're offering fruits and vegetables at low cost. So things are starting to happen.
And that's why it is important not to judge, because it is absolutely, the obesity in those deprived areas is much, much higher. Like, I could pay for swimming lessons, I could pay for footy lessons on a Saturday. It was great. It occupied my kids. They were doing healthy stuff. It all costs money.
At the end of the day, I don't understand the word blame culture. The reality is, if you have an obese child, it is because of 99% because of the parents and the lifestyles that they lead, and we should spell it out clearly, but we should also try and support them to change the culture as opposed to saying it's not your fault or don't have your feelings hurt.
What I meant by that is it's very judgmental just to say parents are to blame 100%. That's
the truth.
No, it isn't, as we've heard from so many people.
Who's feeding your child?
Factors. It's a part of it, but it's not. Society has changed completely, as has people's body shape.
Wrap this debate up, but I think leaving us with what Nicola had said about sort of being empathetic about people's situation is probably the best way to handle it. Lisa, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on this. A huge thank you to Nicola for joining us for that debate.